The title of my message is going to be Thorns on Their Thrones. And my focus chapter is going to be Judges 9, 7 through 21. So if you'd like to turn there. Now, in the beginning of my message, it's going to seem like I'm rushing through a little things and speaking kind of fast, but that's just because there's a lot of material to go over and it's kind of just background. But I promise when I get to my main point, I will slow down. So let's jump right in. So some background on Judges. We know that there was no king in Israel and everyone did as they saw fit in their own eyes back then. They had no one ruling them, so they ruled themselves. And occasionally they had these judges who led them. And they all practiced lawlessness. It says in Judges 17 that there was no king and every man did what was right in his own eyes, not what was right in Yahweh's eyes. And in Judges 19 that there was no king. So Gideon, in the beginning of these chapters of Judges, Gideon is a man of God, and we're just wrapping up in chapter 8 that Gideon wrapped up the war against the Midianites. He, trusting in God, had a small army and defeated the Midianites, who were not only stronger opponents individually, being bigger in height and taller in stature, but even their size of their army was much, much bigger than Gideon's army, outnumbering them, the Israelites. In chapter 7, Gideon captures their two leaders, and by chapter 8, Israel counts this war as finished and as a victory on Israel's side. And they give all the credit to Gideon, and they worship him, kind of, basically. And they reward him with an ephod, which is like a gold adornment, a priestly jewelry of gold with jewels on it. And they ask him to be their king. In Judges 8, it says, "And then the men of Israel said unto Gideon, Rule thou over us, both thou and thy son's son also, for thou hast delivered us from the hand of the Midian. And Gideon said unto them, I will not rule over you, neither shall my son rule over you, but Yahweh shall rule over you." See, Gideon refuses this offer of kingship, and he tells the Israelites, I can't rule over you, but you need to make Yahweh reign and rule over you. Yahweh should be your king. And then you could see him, you've seen that picture of him with the golden ephod. If you would turn to me to Judges 6:32. Judges 6:32 says, "Therefore on that day Gideon was called Jerubbaal." That is to say, let Baal contend against him, because he broke down his altar. So our main scripture, Judges 9, Gideon will be referred to as Jerubbaal. Earlier chapters reveal that Gideon destroyed the altars to Baal, so his name got changed to Jerubbaal, meaning let Baal contend against him. He was a man of Yahweh. He was a mighty man of valor, which is why I believe that he was chosen fit to lead the Israelites in the victory to begin with. And by the end of chapter 8, Gideon basically has lots of children and grows old and dies a peaceful death, which brings us to chapter 9, where we're introduced to his sons and his family and his legacy. So in Judges 9, it takes place in Shechem. Now here in Shechem, we are introduced to Gideon's or Jerubbaal's sons, and one of his sons being Abimelech. Now Abimelech was one of many, many sons, but he was born to a concubine. So he wasn't born to Gideon's wife, so he pretty much had no recognition. And although Abimelech was not entitled to any power, he was kind of power crazy, and he wanted the throne and wanted to be king. In Judges 9:2, it says, "Speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem." This is Abimelech talking. And he says, "Whether it is better for you that either all the sons of Jerubbaal, which are 70 persons, reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and flesh." See, here he is trying to convince the people to make him their king over his 70 brothers, which in present day language is 70 brothers. I guess he fails to convince them with this little method of asking, and he alters his method of persuasion just a little bit in the next couple verses. Judges 9:5-6 says, "And he went unto his father's house at Ophrah, and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal, being 70 persons, upon one stone. Notwithstanding yet Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. And the men of Shechem gathered together in all the house of Milo, and went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem." And you could see there that Abimelech is surrounded by his brother's dead corpse. Now Abimelech slaughters his brothers and murders all 70 of his brothers except for one, in order to line himself to be king. But one of them, the youngest, Jotham, hides himself and is spared. And the people, out of fear, the Israelites, made Abimelech king. So Jotham, the youngest brother, after hiding himself, gets word that the people made the person who killed his brothers, Abimelech, king. And in Judges 9, he says, "And they told it to Jotham, and he went and stood in the top of Mount Gerizim, and lifted up his voice, and cried, and said unto them, Hearken unto me, ye men of Shechem, that God may hearken unto you." Jotham, the son who escaped, goes and stands on this mountain and begins to talk about the main subject of my message. And he begins to tell this parable of sorts that rebukes the people for making Abimelech king. See, you have Mount Gerizim, and then you have Mount Shechem, and then you have Mount Ebal. Shechem's the land that the people are living in, and it's right in between these two mountains. This is significant because Mount Gerizim is meant for blessings, but Jotham is rebuking the people on this mountain. See, in Deuteronomy, it says, "The Lord your God brings you into the land that you are about to enter and possess. You shall pronounce the blessing at Mount Gerizim and the curse at Mount Ebal." Deuteronomy 27 says, "As you cross the Jordan, the following shall stand on Mount Gerizim when the blessings for the people are spoken. For the curse, the following shall stand on Ebal." See, this place where he stands has significance because although he is rebuking the people for making Abimelech king, he is standing on a mountain that's meant to represent blessings. So he's getting Israel's attention at this point and standing on this mountain and sending a clear message of, look, this is intended for growth. This is intended for good. This is intended to benefit you. Although it might hurt, it is tough love, and it's intended to bless you and to help you, not to curse you or to harm you necessarily. So he goes on into my main subject of my lesson, this parable of trees. Judges 9. "The trees went forth on a time to anoint a king over them. And they said unto the olive tree, Reign thou over us. But the olive tree said unto them, Should I leave my fatness, wherewith by me they honor God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees?" This should sound a little bit familiar. The people, the trees, asking an olive tree to reign over them, and it rejecting their offer of kingship. They got rejected. Going on, "The trees said unto the fig tree, Come thou and reign over us. But the fig tree said unto them, Should I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit, and go in to be promoted under the trees? This offer was also declined by the fig tree. Once again, the trees said unto the vine, Come thou and reign over us. And the vine said unto them, Should I leave my wine that cheereth Yahweh and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? Once again, rejecting the tree's offer. Now, we could see that these trees are going up to different kinds of plants and asking them to reign over them, to be king over them, and they keep getting rejected. Now, before we see how this parable ends, I'm going to just break down this beginning part so that you guys could start to see the picture that I'm trying to paint here. We, the Israelites, are the trees asking the plants to rule over us. We, many times in the Bible, are referenced as trees, or trees represent us people all throughout the Bible, and we are compared to trees. We all know the verse, "Every good tree bears good fruit," and that growing fruits of the Spirit, we are to grow fruits of the Spirit and not be withered, and that we shall be like a tree, Psalm 1. All these verses are referencing trees to represent us. But what do the plants that we are asking to reign over us represent in this parable? These plants are seen in Deuteronomy 8:7-8. These first three plants that the trees representing Israel asked to be king have shown themselves in the Bible to be positive representation of God-giving things throughout the Bible. They are shed in a positive light and as Yahweh glorifying objects. Deuteronomy 8:7-8 says, "For Yahweh your God is bringing you into a land of brooks of water, of fountains and of springs, flowing out in the valleys and in the hills. A land of wheat and barley, of vines and figs and pomegranates, a land of olive trees and honey." We could see our three plants are mentioned in here. See, this scripture is talking about the promised land. It's talking about something that Yahweh gifted to the people and promised the people. These scriptures are talking about our three plants in a good way, a positive light. But why are they rejecting the offer of reignship of Yahweh, from Yahweh? We're going to take a look at why these plants turn down the offer and what happens when you take the things of Yahweh and ask them to reign over you other than Yahweh. So starting with the olive tree in this parable represents the church. See, in the Bible, the church is commonly referred to as a tree as well. Okay, in Romans 11, Paul talks about to the Gentiles about them being able to be grafted into the olive tree, which stands for Israel, Yahweh's people and Yahweh's church. In this Romans 11, it says, "And some of the branches be broken off, and thou, being a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them, and with them partakest of the root and the fatness of the olive tree." Skipping to 19, "Thou wilt say to them, the branches were broken off, that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off. And thou standest by faith, be not high-minded, but fear. For if Yahweh spared not the natural branches, take heed, lest he also not spare you. And they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted back in. For Yahweh is able to graft them in again." See, this is talking about the concept of disfellowship, but it goes along with the church as a whole representing, the tree as a whole representing the church body. If you are living in disbelief and not living for Yahweh, you will fall off that branch. But if you believe in Yahweh, anyone, Jew or Gentile alike, will be grafted into the branch and be a part of that branch, that church body. This supports the concept that the church represents the olive tree. And anyone who believes in it will be a part of that olive tree, and everyone who lives for Yahweh will be a part of that olive tree. As we can see here, the olive tree represents the church. So going back to our verse, we can see that the olive tree turned down the offer to reign over the people, saying that it would leave its fatness, wherewith by me they honor God and man. But remember, if the olive tree represents the church, what does this mean, that it should leave its fatness and dishonor God and man? What is the fatness of the church? The fatness of the church is anything that the church provides. So the fatness would be fellowship, financial support, emotional support, counsel, or guidance. The moment that people start viewing church as a god, the moment that they start putting church in Yahweh's place and only wanting the things that the church provides, but not wanting the giver of the church, which is Yahweh, that is only going to church for all the things that the church has to offer, and only coming to church for their pleasures and not coming to please Yahweh, they have asked the church, which is given to men from Yahweh, to reign over them, which cannot be done without the church displeasing Yahweh and spoiling the very principles that God bestowed upon the church. This can't be done because if the church continues to support you when you are not living for Yahweh, you are not of Yahweh, you are not putting Yahweh first and making him Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and the church still supports you and provides you the pleasures of its fatness, it'll be condoning your wicked ways and therefore dishonoring you, allowing you to feel like you're safe and condoning your wickedness. And it'll also be dishonoring Yahweh, and because he meant for the church to be helpful for those who want to pursue him, not for those who are not of him. So you will get rejected if you ask the church to reign over you and aren't living for Yahweh. The church cannot reign over you. You will be rejected just like Israel did when asking the olive tree to reign over them. Moving on to the fig tree. The fig tree represents Yahweh's people. See, where the olive tree represents the church body as a whole, the fig tree represents us as individuals. See, we see here, let's look at these verses. Mark 11:12. The next day, as they were leaving Bethany, Yahshua was hungry, seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf. He went out to find if they had any fruit. When they reached it, he found nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs. Then he said to the trees, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard him say it. And then another verse that references fig trees says, "Therefore I say unto you, the kingdom of Yahweh shall be taken away from you and given to a nation bringing fruits thereof." See, we could see here that the fig tree represents the people of Yahweh as individuals, and the fruits of the Spirit, the fruits that the fig tree was supposed to produce were the fruits of the Spirit or the fruits of works of Yahweh that us as believers should possess and should have. We could see that the fig tree's lack of spiritual fruit caused Yahshua to curse this plant for not bearing fruit. All throughout the Bible, it says that we should bear fruits as believers, as Christians. We should bring forth fruits of Yahweh. This supports that the fig tree can be looked at as Yahweh's people who are to bear fruits of Yahweh, the fruits of the Spirit, the fruits of Yahweh, or else the kingdom of heaven will be taken away from them. So in our verses, when the fig tree rejects the people's offer of kingship and says, "Should I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit?" we could see that it turns down the offer because if it accepts the offer of kingships and lets you, if somebody in the church of Yahweh lets another person idolize them and put them in Yahweh's position, they will spoil their own fruit. They themselves will be wrong. We can read, as we read earlier, a fig tree without fruit is cursed to wither away. So if this fig tree, this person living for Yahweh, accepts your offer of kingships, he'll forsake his own sweetness and his own fruit, and he too will be cursed to death, just like the person idolizing him and putting him in Yahweh's position. If someone in faith accepts this offer, they will be defiling themselves by allowing you to idolize them and not Yahweh. This tree would defile its fruit and would also defile Yahweh, because if it would not, it would be condoning your behavior and also sinning with you, being in Yahweh's position. See, the moment that you start viewing God's people as God, that is only doing the things of Yahweh to not displease your family, or only coming to church for the fellowship of family and friends, or to only coming to be around people, or only coming to please people and not to please Yahweh, you are putting those people in Yahweh's position. You fear them more than you fear Yahweh. You view your relationship with them more important than you view your relationship with Yahweh. And you have made them your God. And by asking them to rule over you, you ask them to defile their own fruits, because they cannot allow you to continue living in sin. They cannot allow you to benefit from their light, their godly fellowship, their godly support, because you will corrupt their good fruit, and you will not be allowed to continue living in sin, and they'll condone that behavior. If they are okay with you not serving Yahweh, but serving them instead, they are wrong too, and they will also be cursed. The people of the church shouldn't be your main priority. It should be Yahweh. Yahweh has blessed you with these people in your life, has given you brothers and sisters in the faith to use as resources and to benefit from, not to corrupt this idea and put them in Yahweh's place. These people in faith are support systems that Yahweh meant for good, not to take his place, not to replace him. And if they support you in this, they will be judged for it as well. Moving on to the vine. In the parable, the vine was also asked, and this vine represents God's blessings. We see in the Bible the vine being positive things or things in good state, and we could see the story of Joseph. Joseph's fellow prisoner told him a dream and said that there was a vine before him. And he said, in the vine there were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, and her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup. And I gave the cup unto Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said unto him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Yet within the 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head and restore thee into thy place. And thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into the hand after the former manner when thou wast his butler. See, we can see here that this dream, Joseph said that this wine represented something good, something blessing, a blessing to come from Yahweh. When the chief butler was imprisoned and told him this dream, the dream in the grapes represented something good to happen, that he would get out of jail and that he would be restored unto the Pharaoh's kingdom. We could also see in other verses that these vines and these grapes represent blessings. Judges 9:27 says, they went out into the field and gathered the grapes of their vineyards and trod them and held a festival and went into the house of their God and ate and drank. Leviticus 26:5 says, indeed, your threshing will last for you until the grape gathering, and the grape gathering will last until the sowing time, and you will thus eat your food to the full and live securely in your land. See, the grapes that were harvested from these vines were made into wine, which was used for joyous occasions of celebration. The vine that budded with grapes represented security, flourishing, riches, safety, some good things, all blessings, all good vibes from. The vine's that response in our parable was, shall I leave my wine which cheereth Yahweh and man? Meaning that if you take the blessings of Yahweh and if you chase only the blessings of Yahweh, then it'll not only upset Yahweh and be wrong before Yahweh. If when you're first introduced to the things of Yahweh, when you first learn about Yahweh, you hear about all the benefits in heaven and all the blessings and things that come, and that should draw you and catch your attention. But if you're only focused on that and you've been in the church for a long time, those things will not keep you. If you're only chasing the blessing, like Jacob from the last message, then you're just looking for a blessing and you don't have a relationship with Yahweh. If you don't crave and thirst for a relationship with Yahweh more than you crave and thirst for the wine and the grapes of the blessings, then you have made the blessings of Yahweh your God, and you have put them in Yahweh's place. As you grow, you need to build a relationship with Yahweh. You need to let Yahweh have the throne of your heart, not Yahweh's blessings be your sole focus. It's just like that one song that Faith sings, help me want the healer more than the healing. Help me want the savior more than the saving, the giver more than the giving. We need to want Yahweh more than we want his blessings. We need to want Yahweh more than we want the people, to use the people of Yahweh. Need to want Yahweh more than the church and all that it provides. A good example of what happens when Yahweh is not reigning over you, but you expect to reap the benefits, is in Jeremiah 8. It says, moreover, you shall say to them, thus saith the Lord, shall they fall and not arise? Shall he turn away and not return? Why then is this people of Jerusalem slidden back by a perpetual backsliding? They hold fast deceit and they refuse to return. I hearkened and heard, but they spake not aright. No man repented of his wickedness, saying, what have I done? Everyone turned to his course, and as the horse rusheth to the battle. See, this is saying that these people were in perpetual backsliding. They were not living for Yahweh. They were not repenting, and they were only ruling themselves, just like the people in Judges, and just like some of us today. Jeremiah 8 continues to say that they were ashamed. Were they ashamed when they had committed this abomination? Nay, they were not at all ashamed. Neither could they blush. Therefore they all fall among them that fall, in the time of their visitation, they shall be cast down, saith Yahweh. I will surely consume them, saith Yahweh. There shall be no grapes on the vine, nor figs on the fig tree, and the leaf shall fade, and all the things that I have given to them shall pass away from them. See, you see that these people were unrepentant sinners who embraced their flesh and were not even ashamed of it. Yahweh said that he will consume them, that he will cast them down, and that there will be no grapes on their vine, because all the things that Yahweh gave to them shall pass away. See, when you're not of Yahweh, you cannot reap the benefits of Yahweh, and you cannot harvest the blessings. No, you will be cursed to suffer in a drought, and you will struggle until you learn that there is no life apart from Yahweh. There is no blessing apart from Yahweh. So that is why the vine rejected the offer to rule over the people. These people were not right. They were corrupt and they ruled themselves. When Gideon in Judges 8 told them, Yahweh shall rule over you, that completely went over their heads. They turned from God. They put themselves and other things on Yahweh's throne where Yahweh should be. They had the audacity to ask for the provisions of Yahweh, asking the church, asking the people, asking the blessings to rain down on them, give them support and aid them while they're not living right. And they completely disregarded the giver of the gifts, the provider of the provisions. They completely disregarded Yahweh. Jotham's parable goes on to talk about the next plant that the trees representing us asked for rule over them. This, Judges 9:14 says, Then all the trees said unto the bramble, Come thou and reign over us. And the bramble said unto the trees, In truth, if ye anoint me king over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow. And if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. See, this bramble plant didn't reject their offer of king like the other plants. But this bramble plant was not mentioned in the promised land plants that we've seen from Yahweh. In fact, this bramble plant is not at all from Yahweh. What is a bramble? For those of you who don't know, a bramble plant is a common thorn of the Palestine area. It is a thorn, it is a prickle, it is a pain-causing, destructive plant. And Jotham says that this thorn is Abimelech. Abimelech, the guy who slaughtered and murdered 70 of his people, 70 of his brothers, to get a seat on the throne. Judges 9 says that, therefore, if ye have done truly and sincerely in that ye have made Abimelech king, and if ye have dealt with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done unto him according to the deserving of his hands, for my father fought for you, and adventured his life far, and delivered you out of the hand of Midian, and ye have risen up against my father's house this day, and have slain his sons 70 persons upon the stone, and have made Abimelech the son of his maidservant king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother. The people did not accept Yahweh as their king. Instead, they tried to crown Gideon as their king, and he rejected it, saying, you need to make Yahweh your king. And then, when he rejected it, they crowned a corrupt man of violence, a man of destruction, as their king, who Jotham refers to as a bramble or a thorn. See, the bramble plant represents the things of the world, flesh or sin. They chose to crown the destructive thorn of death over the life-giving plant of Yahweh. Thorns in the Bible represent the things of the world, and they were referenced as negative, corrupt, bad things from the very beginning, when the world was cursed with these thorns. Genesis 3:17 says, and unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and have eaten of the tree which I command you, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow thou shalt eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles shall bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat of the herb of the field. See, these thorns represent sin ever since the beginning. Ever since Adam ate the apple and the sins came out upon the world, sins corrupted the world with that decision. And at that moment, the ground was cursed with thorns and thistles. These bramble thorns are referred to as corrupt fruit throughout the Bible. We can see in Luke that it says, for a good tree bringeth not forth corrupt fruit, neither doth a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. For every tree is known by its own fruit. For of thorns men do not gather figs, nor of the bramble bush gather they grapes. See, a bad plant, these thorns, these sinful things cannot bring forth the things of Yahweh. Neither can the things of Yahweh bring forth these thorns. Now, the last place that Israel encamped before they entered the promised land was Abel Shittim, which means field of thorns. These plants are not of the promised land, no, they are outside of the promised land. Numbers 25:1 says, and Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab, and they called the people unto the sacrifices of their God, and they did eat, and they bowed down to their gods. Once again, these people are living in idolatry. They are worshiping other gods. They are living in sin. They are practicing lawlessness, and they are not following Yahweh. In Joshua 2:1 it says, and Joshua the son of Nun sent out of Shittim 2 men to spy secretly. So we could see right before they entered the promised land, the people were living in this field of thorns, this field of sin, these lives filled of lust and of idolatry and serving the wrong God. So now you can see why my message is called Thorns on Their Thrones. See, when we enthrone death over life, when we enthrone our flesh over the spirit, the world over Yahweh, we, like these people in Judges, are denied the kingdom. We do not enter the promised land like the Israelites, but we remain stuck in sin, in perpetual backsliding, in the wilderness, roaming around in destruction. See, this is seen all the time through the Bible, this constant trend of dethroning Yahweh with idols and things that don't even compare to Yahweh, things that don't even scratch the surface of his power and glory and greatness of his throne. We, like the Israelites, put false things on his throne. See, when Moses went up the mountain and tried to get the commandments for the people began to worship this golden calf. They said, where is God? There is no God. We'll make a God. And they put something on a golden calf on the throne, a graven image of gold that they called Yahweh. And these people crowned a thorn, a pointless, useless thing, and they gave it Yahweh's position even though it had no power at all. This is a thorn being crowned. Don't be like these Israelites, putting a pointless, useless thing in Yahweh's position because they felt like they had no God. We have a God. Yahweh is our God. Isaiah speaks of some of these things. It says, come near, ye nations, to hear and hearken, ye people. Let the earth come here, and all that is therein, the world, and all the things that come forth from it. And all the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, like withered leaves from the vine, like shriveled figs from the fig tree. And thorns shall come up in her palaces, nettles and brambles in the fortresses thereof. See, withered leaves were on the vine here, and there's no blessing going out to those who are not of Yahweh. Their figs, their fruits, the people's fruits are shriveled. The fig tree has no figs on it. These people are not producing any fruits of Yahweh, but they're producing thorns. And thorns are in their palaces. Thorns are on their thrones. Thorns are where Yahweh should be. Nettles and brambles are in her fortresses. This verse talks about the destructiveness of the thorns and how they will roll over the people in wickedness and not Yahweh roll over them, because the heavens are rolled up like a scroll. They're closed to them. In Hosea, it also talks about some of these. We can see something similar. The people are partaking in idolatry and vanity. And it says, Israel is an empty vine. He bringeth forth no fruit unto himself. According to the multitude of his fruit, he hath increased the altars, according to the goodness of his land. They have made godly images. Their heart is divided. They made godly images just like the people in Judges, just like the Israelites. Their heart is divided. Now they shall be found faulty. He shall break down their altars. He shall spoil their images. For now they shall say, we have no king, because we feared not Yahweh. What then should a king do to us? The high places of Avon means wickedness. The sin of Israel shall be destroyed. The thorn and the thistle shall come up on their altars, and they shall say to the mountains, cover us, and to the hills, fall on us. See, these people that Hosea is talking about, they realize now when it is too late, that they had no king, and that they were wrong, and that they messed up because they were not living for Yahweh. Now when it is too late, they realize they want to cry out to Yahweh in fear, and they want to plead for a quick death, and they're throwing their thorns and their idols and their sin all up on the altar. These useless idols are on their altar now when it is too late. And in fear of what Yahweh will do to them, they're giving it up. But you cannot be like these people and put your thorns and your Isaacs on the altars when it is too late. You need to put your sin up on the altar now. Instead of pleading for a quick death when it is too late, you need to ask Yahweh for life now. Repent and give it all up. See, these thorns, like as I said, were mentioned as sin all throughout the Bible. Your indulgence of sin in your life, you digging into your flesh, manifested itself into the very tools used to torment Yahshua and pierce through his flesh. These thorns that you chose to put on your throne are the very thorns that were made into a crown of thorns on his head. John 19:19 says, Pilate therefore took Yahshua, scourged him, and the soldiers plaited a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put him in a purple robe. And Matthew 27:29 says, and twisting together a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and put a reed in his right hand, and kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. See, these thorns that you have chosen to let rule and reign over your life, these thorns of destruction that you chose over Yahweh, crucified Yahshua, they were fashioned into a whip and lashed him over and over again. These thorns that you put up on the throne were twisted together and tortured Yahshua afresh as a crown was put on his head and used to mock him. If you have these thorns on your throne, you need to get rid of them. You need to put them on the altar, put them on Yahshua for once and for all. No more times, just once and end it all. Give them up. See, take them off Yahweh's seat and give them up to Yahshua, who will take them upon himself and take them upon his head and rid you of them once and for all. That's all.